The Wyoming wind cut through Lillian McGrath's traveling cloak like a butcher's knife through paper. She pressed herself against the depot's weathered wall, watching ice crystals dance in the afternoon light. Dry Creek stretched before her, a collection of wooden buildings huddled against the February cold, their false fronts doing little to hide the rawness beneath. "You, the mail-order bride?" The station master's voice made her jump. His eyes swept over her plain wool dress and eastern boots with barely concealed amusement. "Hayes is running late. Storm's got the roads near impassable." Lillian nodded, clutching her carpetbag tighter. 3 months ago, answering Colton Hayes's advertisement for a practical wife of good character had seemed like salvation. Now, standing in this frozen outpost, she wondered if she'd merely traded one form of desperation for another. The waiting room door banged open. A woman swept in, silk rustling despite the weather, blonde hair arranged in elaborate curls that defied the wind. Behind her, a man in a marshal's badge surveyed the room with sharp eyes. "Why, Marshal Tate," the woman said, her voice carrying that particular sweetness that meant trouble. "Is this our Mr. Hayes' bride?" She circled Lillian like a hawk eyeing a mouse. "How practical. I'm Sadie Donovan," she continued, not waiting for an answer. "My husband owns the bank, and this is Marshal Virgil Tate. We do try to welcome all newcomers to Dry Creek, though I must say we weren't expecting someone quite so Eastern," Marshal Tate supplied, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Hayes didn't mention he was shopping from back east catalogs. Course, after what happened with Ellen, suppose his options were limited." Lillian felt heat rise in her cheeks despite the cold. "Mr. Hayes and I have corresponded extensively, I assure you. Our arrangement is—" "Oh, I'm sure it's very proper," Sadie interrupted, "though one does wonder what kind of woman agrees to marry a man sight unseen. In our circles, we call that—" "Sadie?" A deep voice cut through her words like an axe through kindling. Lillian turned to see a man filling the doorway, broad shoulders blocking the light, snow dusting a coat that had seen better decades. His face was all sharp angles and weathered planes, dark eyes assessing the room with the wariness of someone who'd learned to read danger in small details. "Colton," Marshal Tate straightened, "was just getting acquainted with your bride. Were you—" It wasn't a question. Colton Hayes moved into the room with the controlled grace of a man comfortable with violence but choosing restraint. His gaze settled on Lillian, and something flickered there. Surprise, perhaps, though his expression remained carved from stone. "Miss McGrath," he touched his hat brim. "Storm's worsening. We need to move." "Now, Colton," Sadie's laugh tinkled like broken glass. "Surely you'll allow us to properly welcome—" "No." He stepped past her, picked up Lillian's carpetbag with one hand, with the other. He shrugged out of his heavy coat and held it out to her. "Your cloak's too thin. Put this on." Lillian hesitated. The coat smelled of leather and wood smoke, of hard work and wide spaces. It would swallow her whole, but the gesture practical, unsentimental, yet somehow protective made her throat tight. "Thank you," she managed, sliding her arms into sleeves that hung past her fingertips. "Reverend's waiting," Colton said, "unless you've changed your mind." The question hung between them. Lillian could feel Sadie's smirk, Tate's calculating gaze, but stronger than that was the steady weight of Colton's attention patient. Wary, but not unkind. "I haven't changed my mind, Mr. Hayes." Something shifted in his expression. "Then let's get this done." The church stood at the town's edge, its whitewash graying in the fading light. Reverend Morrison waited inside, a thin man who performed the ceremony with perfunctory efficiency. The witnesses were his wife, who kept shooting Lillian sympathetic glances, and the church caretaker who smelled strongly of whiskey. "Do you, Colton James Hayes, take this woman—" Lillian barely heard the words. She was too aware of the man beside her, the calluses on the hand that held hers, the way he stood like he was braced for a blow. When her turn came, her voice emerged steadier than she felt. "I do." Colton's eyes met hers then, and she saw surprise there, as if he'd expected her to bolt, as if maybe part of him had hoped she would. The ring he slipped on her finger was plain silver, worn smooth. "Was my mother's," he said quietly, the first personal thing he told her. Outside, the storm had transformed into a proper blizzard. Colton led her to a wagon reinforced with runners for snow, helped her climb aboard. The wind screamed around them as they left Dry Creek behind, heading into a white wall of nothing. "How far?" Lillian asked, teeth chattering despite the coat. 8 miles. Maybe 3 hours in this?" She calculated quickly. Dark would fall before they arrived. "Will we make it?" He glanced at her, and she thought she saw the ghost of approval. "You're not prone to vapors, are you?" "I wouldn't have come if I were." "No," he agreed. "Suppose you wouldn't." They rode in silence, broken only by the wind and the creak of wheels on snow. Lillian's hands went numb inside her gloves. Just when she thought she couldn't endure another moment, lights appeared through the swirling white. The ranch house materialized like something from a fever dream, low and sturdy, built to withstand everything the territory could throw at it. Colton pulled up near the door, was down and reaching for her before she could move. "Can you walk?" She tried to climb down, but her frozen skirts tangled. Without ceremony, he lifted her from the wagon, carried her to the door. For a moment, she was wrapped in warmth that had nothing to do with shelter, the solid strength of his arms, the steady beat of a heart through layers of wool. Then they were inside, and he was setting her on her feet, turning away to tend the fire. The house was sparse but clean. Everything had its place: iron pots on hooks, rifles on pegs, a Bible on the mantel. It spoke of a man who'd pared life down to essentials. "I'll see to the horses." Colton said, "Bedrooms through there. There's only one bed. I'll take the floor tonight." Mr. Hayes." "We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." He paused at the door, not quite meeting her eyes. "Water buckets by the stove if you want to wash up. Welcome to the Double H Mrs. Hayes." Then he was gone, leaving Lillian alone in her new home. She stood there, still wearing his coat, and tried to make sense of what she'd done. Married a stranger, traveled to the edge of civilization, bound herself to a man who handled her like spun glass but looked at the world like it might bare teeth at any moment. From somewhere outside, she heard Colton's voice, low and steady, calming the horses. A practical man, her husband, one who gave his coat to a stranger and carried his mother's ring in his pocket. Lillian McGrath? No. Hayes now squared her shoulders and went to explore her new home. Whatever came next, there was no going back through that blizzard. Come morning, she'd begin the work of proving she was worth more than whatever Sadie Donovan thought a mail-order bride could be. The wind howled its agreement, and somewhere in the barn, her husband wrestled with frozen latches and his own doubts. Their wedding night would be spent apart, him with the horses, her learning the corners of a house that still held another woman's ghost. It wasn't the stuff of fairy tales, but then Lillian hadn't come to Wyoming territory looking for princes. She'd come looking for a chance to matter, to build something real with her own 2 hands. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on bare walls. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges: ranch work, suspicious neighbors, the delicate dance of 2 strangers learning to share a life. Tonight, though, she had shelter from the storm, and a man who'd given her his coat without her asking. It was enough to begin. The rooster's crow came too early, cutting through the pre-dawn darkness like a rusty blade. Lillian woke disoriented, her body stiff from the unfamiliar bed. For a moment, she couldn't place the rough-hewn walls or the weight of heavy quilts. Then memory flooded back the journey, the hasty wedding, the silent house. She found Colton already gone, only the indent in the parlor's makeshift bedroll showing where he'd slept. Through the kitchen window, a lantern bobbed in the barn. Her husband was already at work. The water in the kitchen bucket had a film of ice. Lillian broke it with a wooden spoon, splashed her face, and set about exploring her new domain. The house was larger than it first appeared: 2 bedrooms, a decent parlor, and a kitchen with a proper stove. But everywhere she looked, she saw signs of neglect. Not filth, but the slow deterioration that came when survival took all a man's energy. Curtains hung limp and gray. The pantry's shelves were bare except for basic supplies. A woman's apron still hung on a peg by the door, faded blue fabric gathering dust. Ellen's apron, the first wife. Lillian touched it gently, then took it down. She'd asked Colton before disposing of anything, but the house needed to breathe again. By the time he returned, she had biscuits baking and coffee strong enough to float horseshoes. He stopped in the doorway, surprise flickering across his features. "You didn't need to." "I'm your wife, Mr. Hayes." Cooking breakfast hardly qualifies as extraordinary effort. He studied her for a long moment, then hung his hat on the peg where the apron had been. "Just Colton, and thank you." They ate in silence that wasn't entirely uncomfortable. Lillian noticed how he favored his left hand, the right moving stiffly. Old injury. He glanced at the hand. "Broke it. Set wrong." "May I?" She didn't wait for permission. Taking his hand in both of hers, the bones had indeed healed poorly, leaving 2 fingers partially curved. "This must pain you in cold weather." "It's nothing." "It's something if it interferes with your work." She released his hand, already planning. "I know some liniments that might help." Before he could respond, hoofbeats sounded outside. Colton was on his feet instantly, hand moving toward where a rifle would hang. "Easy," a voice called. "Just your neighbors, not claim jumpers." The couple who entered brought warmth with them. Jed Crow was tall and lean, with laugh lines carved deep. His wife Martha was round and cheerful, carrying a covered basket that smelled of cinnamon. "Thought we'd come welcome the new Mrs. Hayes," Martha said, embracing Lillian like an old friend. "Brought apple bread. Figure you haven't had time to stock proper yet." "That's very kind." Lillian felt tears threaten. The simple acceptance was overwhelming after yesterday's cold reception. "Don't mind Sadie Donovan and her gaggle," Martha continued, as if reading her thoughts. "Some folks got nothing better to do than judge others. You'll find real people out here care more about character than pedigree." "Speaking of real people," Jed said, "noticed your fence lines down near Miller Creek. Cattle will wander come spring thaw." Colton's jaw tightened. "I'll get to it." "We could help," Jed offered. "Make a day of it. Martha's been dying for female company that doesn't involve Sadie's sewing circle. We couldn't impose." "No imposition," Martha cut Lillian off. "That's what neighbors do." After they left, Lillian found Colton staring out the window toward the damaged fence line. "I can help with the repairs," she offered. "You ever built fence?" "No, but I can learn." He turned to study her. She stood straight, meeting his gaze despite the churning in her stomach. She needed to be useful, needed to prove she wasn't just another burden on his already heavy shoulders. "All right," he said finally. "Get changed into something you don't mind ruining." The work was brutal. The ground was frozen solid, making post holes nearly impossible. Lillian's hands blistered inside her gloves. Her back screamed, but she didn't complain, didn't stop, just kept hauling wire and holding posts while Colton drove them deep. "You're bleeding." His voice startled her. She looked down to see red seeping through her glove. "It's nothing." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "That's my line." He took her hand, peeled back the glove carefully. The blister had torn badly. "Come on, that needs tending." Back at the house, he cleaned the wound with surprising gentleness. "Why didn't you say something?" Would you have? No, but I'm used to it. I'll get used to it too. He wrapped her hand in clean cloth, his touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. You don't have to prove anything, Lillian. Don't I? She met his eyes. You advertised for a practical wife. I intend to be one. I advertised for a lot of things. His voice was quiet. Doesn't mean I expected to get them. That evening, she found him in the barn, tending a calf that had taken sick. The little creature was barely breathing, its mother lowing anxiously in the next stall. Will it make it? Maybe, if it stays warm. Take some nourishment. He looked tired, older than his years. Lost 6 head already this winter? Show me what to do. Together they worked through the night, taking turns feeding the calf warm milk mixed with molasses, keeping it wrapped in blankets. Lillian dozed against a hay bale, waking to find Colton's coat draped over her. Near dawn, the calf struggled to its feet, wobbly but alive. I'll be damned. Colton breathed, then, pardon my language. I've heard worse. Lillian stroked the calf's head. What made you place that advertisement? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Ranch needs 2 people to run it proper, and he hesitated. Gets quiet out here. Too much time to think. About Ellen. His shoulders tensed. Town gossip's been filling your ears already. Marshall Tate mentioned her. I'm sorry. I know it's painful. She died of fever, 3 winters back. His voice was flat, factual. Doctor couldn't come. Roads were bad. I tried everything, but... He stood abruptly. Sun's up. Best get breakfast started. Over the following days, they fell into a rhythm. Up before dawn. Work until dark. Collapse into their separate beds. Lillian learned to pump water when the pipe froze, to spot signs of sickness in the cattle, to mend harnesses and stretch supplies. Her hands grew calloused, her muscles strong. But the distance between them remained carefully maintained. They were partners in work, nothing more. One evening, Lillian was struggling with the account books when Colton came in. Problems. Your numbers don't add up, unless I'm reading this wrong. You're spending more than you're bringing in. He looked over her shoulder, close enough that she could smell the honest sweat and leather of him. That's about right. But how? Bad winter, lost cattle, feed prices up, bank payments due soon. He straightened. Nothing for you to worry about. I'm your wife. Your problems are mine. On paper. The words stung more than they should have. Lillian closed the ledger carefully. Is that all you want, a business arrangement? It's what we agreed to. No, you advertised for a wife. I answered. Neither of us said anything about keeping everything locked away, like... She gestured at the bare walls, the careful distances, like you're afraid to live. His face went still. Dangerous. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? This whole house is a shrine to someone who's gone. And you. Enough. The word cracked like a whip. You want to help, fine. Keep the house, help with the stock, but don't presume to know me after 2 weeks. He stormed out, leaving Lillian shaking. She'd pushed too hard, too fast, but the alternative was this careful dance forever. 2 strangers sharing walls, but nothing else. Late that night, she heard him in the kitchen. She found him sitting at the table, staring at a small tin-type photograph. I'm sorry, she said softly. I had no right. He didn't look up. This is Ellen, our wedding day. Lillian sat across from him, waiting. She hated it here. His voice was rough. Oh, she tried, but she was from St. Louis, used to society, culture. I promised her it would get better, that we'd build something grand. Instead, she died in that bedroom, burning with fever, calling for her mother. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? I brought her here. I made promises I couldn't keep, and when she needed me most. He set the photograph down. I won't do that again. I'm not Ellen. No. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. You're not. You hauled fence wire until your hands bled. You spent all night with a sick calf. You're trying to make sense of my mess of books. A pause. You're stronger than she was. Or maybe I just have less to lose. He studied her in the lamplight. What did you leave behind? Nothing worth keeping. A position as companion to a wealthy woman who thought servants weren't quite human. A cousin who offered marriage if I'd be grateful enough. She met his eyes. I came here for a new start. A chance to matter. You matter. The words seemed to surprise him. The work you've done, I notice. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even friendship. Exactly. But it was a crack in the wall. A small space where something might grow. The bank payment, Lillian said. How much? $200, due in 6 weeks. Then we'd better make sure the rest of that fence gets mended. Can't afford to lose any more cattle. A real smile touched his lips then, transforming his face. No, we can't. Such a small word to carry so much hope. Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle this time. Inside, 2 people sat at a kitchen table, not touching, not speaking of love or loss, but for the first time since her arrival. Lillian felt the possibility of home. The argument started over something trivial, a broken harness that Colton had meant to mend and forgotten. But like most fights between people dancing around deeper truths, it quickly spiraled into something else. I said I'd fix it, Colton snapped, yanking the leather from Lillian's hands. When after we lose another horse to a snapped line? She grabbed it back. I can handle this. Like you handled the water pump yesterday. Took me an hour to fix what you handled. The words hung between them like icicles. Lillian's face flushed, but not with embarrassment. 3 weeks of careful distance, of trying so hard, and this was her thanks. At least I tried, which is more than you do with anything that isn't 4-legged and mooing. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Forget it. She turned away, but he caught her arm. No, say what you mean. Fine. She whirled on him. You want me to be practical? Here's practical. You've got a wife willing to work herself raw for this ranch, and you treat me like hired help you're too polite to fire. You share more with your horse than with me. You knew what this was? Did I? Because your advertisement said wife, not unpaid ranch hand who happens to sleep under the same roof? Her voice cracked. I'm trying, Colton, but I can't do this alone. He released her arm as if burned. You want to leave that what you're saying? The question stopped her cold. Did she? The thought of packing her few belongings, heading back to what? There was nothing waiting for her back east. But was this any better, this half-life, with a man who looked through her more than at her? I don't know, she admitted quietly. Maybe I should. Something shifted in his expression, fear, but it was gone before she could name it. Storm's coming, he said, voice carefully neutral. If you're going, best decide quick. He left her standing in the barn, harness still clutched in her hands. Through the open door, she could see dark clouds massing on the horizon. The temperature was dropping fast. Inside, Lillian packed mechanically. 2 dresses, her few treasured books, the hairbrush that had been her mother's. It fit in the same carpet bag she'd arrived with. 3 weeks, and she'd barely made a mark on this place. She found Colton's emergency money in the kitchen tin, enough for stage fare to Cheyenne. From there, she'd figure it out. She always had. The knock at the door startled her. Jed Crow stood on the porch, hat in hand. Afternoon, Mrs. Hayes. Colton asked me to stop by. Make sure you're set for the storm. She swallowed hard. That was thoughtful. Jed's eyes took in her traveling cloak, the carpet bag by the door. Going somewhere? I think so. Yes. In this weather, blizzard's gonna hit within the hour. I'll be fine. No, ma'am, you won't. His voice was gentle but firm. Temperatures dropping fast. You get caught out in what's coming. They won't find you till spring thaw. As if to emphasize his point, the wind suddenly howled, rattling the windows. The first snow began to fall, not gentle flakes, but driving pellets of ice. "Where's Colton?" "Went to check the eastern pasture, said some cattle were—" Jed's face changed. "Oh, hellfire. He doesn't know the storm moved in early." "What do you mean?" "Weather Service predicted it wouldn't hit till nightfall, but these spring storms—" He was already moving toward the door. "That eastern pasture's a good hour ride. If he gets caught out there—" Lillian's anger evaporated, replaced by cold fear. "We have to find him." "We nothing. I'll go." Like hell. The profanity surprised them both. "I know the route, and 2 people searching doubles the chances." "I'm Mrs. Hayes." Arguing wastes time. She was already pulling on Colton's extra coat, the one he'd given her that first day. "Help me saddle a horse." 20 minutes later, they rode into the teeth of the storm. The world had become a white wall, landmarks erasing themselves between one breath and the next. Lillian pulled her scarf higher, squinting against the driving snow. "Stay close," Jed shouted over the wind. "If we get separated—" She didn't hear the rest. The cold was like nothing she'd experienced, turning her lungs to ice with each breath. Her horse stumbled, recovered, pushed on. An hour passed, maybe more. Time lost meaning in the white, then a dark shape against the snow. "There." Colton's horse stood riderless, reins tangled in sagebrush. No sign of the man himself. "Colton!" Lillian screamed his name, but the wind swallowed it. She dismounted, nearly fell as her numb feet hit the ground. "Colton! Here!" The voice was weak, but it was his. She found him 20 yards away, half buried in a drift. His face was white, lips blue. "Can't feel my legs," he managed. "Jed, over here." She dropped to her knees beside him, checking for obvious injuries. His ankle was twisted at an ugly angle. Together, she and Jed got him on a horse. The journey back was a nightmare of white and cold, and Colton's weight sagging against her. By the time they reached the ranch, all 3 were near frozen. "Get him inside," Jed ordered. "I'll see to the horses and ride for Doc Phillips." "You can't ride out again in this—" "Martha'll have my hide if I don't try." He was already leading the horses away. "Get him warm. That's what matters now." Inside, Lillian worked with desperate efficiency. Colton was barely conscious, skin like ice. She stripped his wet clothes with clinical detachment, wrapped him in every blanket she could find, stoked the fire until the stove glowed red. "So cold," he mumbled. I know. She rubbed his hands between hers, trying to force warmth into frozen flesh. "Stay with me." His eyes focused on her face. "You stayed." "Hush, save your strength." "Saw your bag. You were leaving." "Well, I couldn't very well leave you to freeze to death. Who'd run this ranch?" A ghost of smile. "Practical. That's what you advertised for." She made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, forced him to drink. Color began returning to his face, though he winced every time he moved his ankle. "Probably broken," she diagnosed. "We'll need to set it." "Hey, you know how—" "I watched my father once. He was a doctor. Before." She didn't finish. "Before the war, before the drinking, before everything fell apart." "Didn't know that." "You never asked." "No," he agreed quietly. "I didn't." The storm raged for 2 days. Jed never made it back with Doc Phillips. It was just Lillian and Colton, trapped in a snow globe world. She set his ankle as best she could, using strips of kindling for splints. He bore it with gritted teeth, only crying out once when the bone shifted into place. "Sorry," she whispered. "Don't be. You've got good hands." She looked down at those hands calloused now, nails broken, so different from the soft city hands she'd arrived with. They're practical hands. More than that. The second night, fever took him. Lillian sat beside the bed, bathing his face with cool cloths, listening to him mumble through dreams. "Shouldn't have come here," he said, eyes bright with fever. "Too hard. Too much alone." "You're not alone," she told him. "I'm here." "You were leaving." "I changed my mind." "Why?" She thought about it, watching his face in the lamplight. Why had she turned back? Not just the storm or his danger. Something else, something that had taken root despite the distance between them. "Because running away is what I've always done," she admitted. "When things got hard, when people disappointed me, I ran. But maybe the brave thing is to stay, to try." His hand found hers, grip weak but real. "I'm glad." "Why did you send Jed to check on me?" "Didn't want you traveling in the storm." "You could have come yourself." "You were angry, rightfully, I thought." He swallowed. "Thought you'd already made up your mind. About leaving. About me, that I wasn't worth the trouble." "Oh, Colton." She squeezed his hand. "You impossible man. You're worth all kinds of trouble. I just need you to let me in." "I don't know how," he admitted. "Been alone so long. Even with Ellen, I kept parts locked away. It's easier." "Easier isn't always better." "No," he agreed. "It's not." The fever broke near dawn. Lillian woke slumped in the chair beside his bed, their hands still linked. Colton was watching her, eyes clear. "Hi," she said. "Hi." He studied her face. "You look terrible." "Charming, you sweet talker." "I mean it. When's the last time you slept properly or ate?" "I've been a bit busy keeping you alive." "Well, stop it. I'm fine now." She laughed, surprising them both. "Is that an order? A request? From a grateful husband who's been an ass?" "Just one ass. Several, a whole herd of them." She smiled, smoothing the quilts. "The storm's breaking. Jed will bring Doc Phillips soon." "Lillian." His voice stopped her at the door. "I meant what I said, about being glad, and I want to try. To let you in. I don't know if I'll be good at it." "I don't need you to be good at it. I just need you to try." Partners. Partners. Later, when Doc Phillips had come and gone, pronouncing the ankle well set and Colton lucky to have such a capable nurse, they sat together by the fire. The carpetbag was back in the bedroom, unpacked, outside. Weak sunlight broke through the clouds, making the snow-covered ranch sparkle. "Hell of a honeymoon," Colton said wryly. "I've had worse." He looked at her, startled. "When were you married before?" "I wasn't, but I've had worse experiences than being snowed in with you. Even with me being what was it, several asses." "Even then," she paused. "Though, if you'd like to make it up to me, you could tell me about that book you keep hidden in the barn." His ears reddened. "You saw that poetry, Byron, wasn't it?" "My secret shame. A cowboy reading poetry." "I think it's wonderful." "You do?" "I do. Maybe you could read some to me while your ankle heals." He smiled then, a real smile that changed his whole face. "I'd like that." Outside, the snow began to melt, running off the roof in musical drops. Spring was coming, and with it all the challenges of ranch life, bank payments and cattle drives and the judgment of the town. But for now, in this moment, two people sat by a fire, no longer strangers, not yet lovers, but something new, partners, friends, two souls learning to thaw. It was more than enough, it was everything. The trip to Morrison's feed store should have been simple. They needed supplies, salt licks for the cattle, new leather for repairs, flour and coffee for the house. Colton's ankle had healed enough for short rides. though Lillian insisted on driving the wagon. "I'm not an invalid," he'd grumbled that morning. "No, you're a stubborn man who'll re-injure himself out of pride." She'd handed him his coffee with a look that brooked no argument. "Let me handle the reins. You can protect my delicate feminine sensibilities if we encounter bandits." "Your delicate sensibilities could probably handle bandits better than I could." It was the kind of easy teasing that had developed between them since the storm. Not quite affection, but warmth. Progress. The town seemed busier than usual. Clusters of people talking in low voices that died when their wagon passed. Lillian felt eyes on them, sharp as winter wind. "Something's happened." Colton murmured, "At Morrison's. They found out what—" Ben Morrison stood behind his counter, face flushed with whiskey, though it was barely noon. His wife Sarah huddled in the corner, eyes red-rimmed. "Hayes." Ben's greeting was a growl. "Surprised you'd show your face." "Ben," Colton's voice was carefully neutral. "Something wrong." "Wrong," Ben laughed, ugly and bitter. "My boy's sick. Doc says it's the fever. Same thing that took your first wife." The words landed like a slap. Lillian felt Colton go rigid beside her. "I'm sorry to hear that," Colton said quietly. "If there's anything we can do—" "You've done enough." Ben stepped around the counter, whiskey breath preceding him. "Bringing disease to this town. First Ellen, now my Thomas, and here you are with a new wife, like the first one never mattered." "Ben," Sarah's voice was weak. "Please." "No." He whirled on her. "Someone needs to say it. Man couldn't keep his first wife alive. Brings in some mail-order replacement quick as you please. No decent mourning period. No respect for the dead." "That's enough." Lillian stepped forward. "Mr. Morrison, you're drunk and grieving, but that gives you no right—" "Don't you lecture me, woman. We all know what kind of female answers those advertisements. Desperate, used goods, probably run out of wherever you came from." The crack of Colton's fist against Ben's jaw was sharp as a gunshot. Ben staggered back, crashed into a display of canned goods. Cans rolled everywhere, the noise enormous in the sudden silence. "Colton!" Lillian grabbed his arm as he advanced on the fallen man. His face was stone, but his eyes— She'd never seen such fury. "Oh, you can insult me all you like, Morrison." His voice was deadly quiet. "But you speak to my wife with respect, or I'll teach you manners with more than my fists." Ben spat blood, glaring up at them. "Get out, both of you! Take your business elsewhere!" "Gladly." Colton turned to go, then stopped. "And Ben, the fever that took Ellen came from a traveling medicine show. She caught it in this very store, buying ribbon for a dress. So before you go spreading blame, maybe look at your own doorstep." Outside, Colton's hands shook as he tried to climb into the wagon. Lillian saw the blood, then his knuckles split, already swelling. "Let me see." "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." She cradled his hand in both of hers, examining the damage. "You could have broken something." "Worth it. Defending my honor, very gallant." He had no right. Colton's jaw was still tight. "Speaking to you that way. Speaking about Ellen." "No, he didn't." She pulled out her handkerchief, began wrapping his hand. "But he's scared for his son. Fear makes people cruel." "You're defending him." "I'm understanding him. There's a difference." She tied off the makeshift bandage. "Though I admit, watching you punch him was satisfying." A surprised laugh escaped him. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm shocked." "Well, Mr. Hayes, it seems we both have our savage sides." They managed to get basic supplies from the general store, though conversation died when they entered. Sadie Donovan was holding court near the fabric counter, her voice carrying clearly. Always said there was something off about that match. A grieving widower, a desperate spinster, and now violence in broad daylight. What's next?" Good afternoon, Mrs. Donovan, Lillian said pleasantly. Lovely weather we're having. Sadie's face pinched. Mrs. Hayes, I heard there was an altercation at Morrison's. Mr. Morrison had too much to drink and forgot his manners. My husband reminded him. These things happen. Violence is never the answer. Neither is cruelty. Lillian met her gaze steadily. But I suppose we all have our failings. The ride home was quiet. Colton held his injured hand against his chest, lost in thought. Lillian let the silence stretch until they were out of town. Tell me about Ellen. He looked at her, startled. Why? Because she was your wife. Because her ghost is in every corner of our home. Because I'd like to know her as more than just a source of gossip and guilt. What do you want to know? What made you love her? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then she laughed at everything, found joy in the smallest things: a flower, a pretty sunset, a new ribbon. She made everything feel lighter. She sounds lovely. She was too lovely for this place. I knew it, but I was selfish. I wanted her, wanted that light in my life. His voice roughened. The fever took her in 3 days. Doc couldn't come, roads were washed out. I tried everything I knew, but she just burned away. Lillian reached over, took his uninjured hand. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? I brought her here. If she'd stayed in St. Louis, she might have died of fever there too, or in childbirth, or 100 other ways. She squeezed his hand. You can't carry guilt for acts of God. Colton. Ben Morrison thinks otherwise. Ben Morrison is watching his child suffer and needs someone to blame. You're convenient. Maybe I deserve it. Stop. She pulled the wagon to a halt, turned to face him fully. You want to honor Ellen's memory, then live? Be happy. Build the life you two dreamed of. Don't bury yourself with her. His eyes searched her face. Is that what you think I'm doing? Isn't it? I was until... He stopped, looked away. Until a practical woman answered my advertisement and started shaking things up. I do not shake things up. You rearranged my entire kitchen. It was inefficient. You taught my horse to come when you whistle. Basic training. You've got half the ranch hands asking for your liniment recipe. Their joints hurt in the cold. You make me want things I'd given up on. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Lillian's heart hammered against her ribs. What things? She whispered. He turned back to her, and the look in his eyes stole her breath. Things I don't have words for yet, things that scare me more than any blizzard or angry drunk. Colton. I'm not good at this. Lillian, at feeling, at showing it. Ellen used to say I loved her like I was afraid she'd disappear. Did she? Yes. The word was raw. She disappeared, and I thought I'd never... But then you show up with your practical ways and your stubborn streak and your hands that work miracles. And I... You what? I want to do better, be better, for you. He laughed shakily. God knows you deserve better than a broken-down rancher with more debts than sense. I don't want a different rancher. She moved closer on the wagon seat. I want the one who gives me his coat without asking, who reads Byron in secret, who defends my honor even when I don't need defending. Lillian. I want the one who sends his neighbor to check on me, even when he thinks I'm leaving, who trusts me to set his bones and manage his accounts. Closer still. Who looks at me like I'm more than just practical. You are more, he said roughly. So much more. Then stop punishing yourself for living. Stop keeping me at arm's length. Let me love you, you impossible man. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Love. Too soon. Too much. She started to pull back, but his good hand caught her face, gentle as he'd ever touched her. You love me. That is... She drew a shaky breath. Yes, God help me. Yes. Even after seeing the worst of me, the debts, the temper, the walls I put up. Especially after, because I've also seen you gentle a spooked horse and stay up all night with sick calves. I've seen you defend me and trust me and try so hard to let me in even when it terrifies you. It does terrify me, he admitted. I loved Ellen, but it was young love, easy love. This thing with you feels deeper, like if I let myself fall, I might never find bottom. Is that so bad? No. Wonder crept into his voice. No, I don't think it is. He kissed her then, there on the wagon seat with the sun warm on their faces and his hand bandaged between them. It was gentle, careful, like he was afraid she'd vanish if he held too tight. But when she pressed closer, his control cracked. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and necessary. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lillian saw moisture in his eyes. I don't deserve you, he said. Probably not, she agreed, winning a startled laugh. But you're stuck with me now. Promise. I already made that promise. In a cold church with terrible witnesses. Remember? I want to make it again, he said suddenly, properly. When I can stand at the altar without thinking of anything but you. When the whole town can see I'm choosing you, not settling for what I could get. Colton Hayes, are you proposing to your own wife? Maybe. Would she say yes? She might, if you asked nicely. Lillian McGrath Hayes, love of my life, pain in my neck, saver of calves and setter of bones, will you marry me again for real this time? Yes, she laughed through tears. Yes, you romantic fool. Good. Now can you drive us home? My hand hurts like the devil, and I think I need that liniment you mentioned. See practical. The most beautiful practical woman in Wyoming territory. Smooth talker. I'm learning. As they headed home, Lillian's heart felt too big for her chest. There would be consequences for the scene at Morrison's. She knew small towns and long memories. But right now, with Colton's good hand holding hers and the ranch waiting for them, she couldn't bring herself to care. They'd face whatever came together. Partners, friends, and now, finally, something more. The sun was setting by the time they reached home, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. As Colton had said, it was a pretty sunset, the kind Ellen would have loved, the kind worth sharing with someone who made everything feel lighter. Thank you, she told the sky silently. Thank you for loving him first. I'll take care of him now. And in the gentle evening breeze, she could almost swear she heard laughter. The mountain storm caught them 15 miles from home. They'd made the journey to deliver horses to the Patterson Ranch. A trip that should have been simple, but spring storms in Wyoming territory had their own rules. And this one came roaring down from the peaks like a living thing. That came up fast, Colton muttered, eyeing the black clouds eating the horizon. Lillian pulled her coat tighter, remembering another storm, another desperate ride. But this was different. They were together now, truly together. The awkward distances of their early marriage replaced by something warm and real. There's a line shack about 3 miles east. Colton said, Old trapper's cabin the ranch uses for shelter. We can make it if we push. Thunder cracked overhead, and the first fat raindrops splattered the dusty trail. Within minutes, it was a deluge. The wagon wheels slipped in sudden mud, the horses straining against their traces. Hold on! Colton fought to control the team as they lurched sideways. Lillian gripped the seat, adding her weight to his on the reins. Together they muscled the wagon back on the track, but the rain came harder, turning the world into a gray curtain. By the time they spotted the cabin, they were soaked through. It squatted against a hillside like a forgotten thought, rough logs chinked with mud, a door hanging crooked on leather hinges, but it had a roof and walls, which made it paradise. Get inside, Colton ordered. I'll see to the horses. We'll both see to them. She was already climbing down. gasping as cold rain hit her face. Partners. Remember? They worked in practiced harmony, unhitching the team, leading them to the lean-to shelter beside the cabin. Their movements were economical, born of weeks working side by side, even in the chaos of the storm. Lillian felt the rhythm of it the way they moved around each other, anticipating needs without words. Inside the cabin was basic but dry. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a narrow bunk built into another. Someone had left split wood stacked by the hearth, along with matches wrapped in oilcloth. "Bless whoever thought ahead," Lillian said through chattering teeth. "Ranch rule," Colton explained, working to start a fire. "Always leave it ready for the next person. Never know when someone might need shelter fast." Soon flames crackled to life, pushing back the gloom. They stood close to the heat, puddles forming at their feet. Lillian's hair had come completely undone, hanging in wet ropes down her back. She caught Colton watching her, something soft in his expression. "What?" "Nothing, just, you look like a drowned cat." "Beautiful." The word came out rough, honest. "You look beautiful." Heat that had nothing to do with the fire swept through her. They'd been married over 2 months now, but moments like this still caught her off guard, the intensity in his eyes, the careful way he said things that mattered. "We should get out of these wet clothes," she said, then blushed at how it sounded. "There's a trunk here." Colton investigated a wooden box in the corner. Some old blankets. Better than nothing. They turned their backs to each other, peeling off sodden layers with fumbling fingers. Lillian wrapped herself in a musty but dry blanket. Tried not to think about the fact that her husband was doing the same just feet away. They'd been living as truly married for weeks now. But something about this moment, the isolation, the storm, the firelight made everything feel charged with possibility. "You decent?" Colton asked. "As decent as circumstances allow." She turned to find him similarly wrapped, his shoulders bare above the blanket's edge. The firelight caught the planes of his face, the small scar on his collarbone she'd discovered one night when thunder crashed directly overhead, making them both jump. The rain hammered the roof like desperate fists. "We'll be here a while," Colton observed. "Good thing I like the company." They spread their clothes near the fire to dry, then sat on the cabin's single chair, Lillian on Colton's lap, his arms around her for warmth. It should have felt awkward, but instead it was perfect. Safe. Right. "Tell me something I don't know about you," she said. "Like what?" "Anything. We're stuck here. Might as well learn each other's secrets." He thought for a moment. "I wanted to be a teacher once." "Oh, really?" Before my father died, before I took over the ranch, thought I'd go to normal school, come back and teach in town." He laughed quietly. "Can you imagine me trying to wrangle school children?" "I think you'd have been wonderful. You're patient when you explain things. And you care about doing things right." "Maybe. But then I'd never have placed that advertisement. Never have met you." "Fate works in strange ways." She leaned back against his chest. "My turn." "Your turn. I can play piano. Or could, once. Haven't touched one in years. We could get one. For the house. Colton, we can barely afford feed. Someday. Then, when the ranch is profitable again, I'd like to hear you play." "Someday," she agreed, though they both knew someday was a luxury people like them couldn't count on. The storm raged on. They talked about everything and nothing: childhood memories, favorite foods, places they'd like to see. With each story shared, the walls between them crumbled a little more. "I was terrified," Colton admitted suddenly. "When?" "That first day, when I saw you at the depot. You were so—" He struggled for words. "Clean, proper. Like something that belonged in a parlor, not a ranch. I thought you'd take one look at the life I was offering and run." "I almost did," she confessed, "especially after Sadie's welcome." "But you stayed. You gave me your coat. She smiled at the memory. Such a simple thing, but it told me what I needed to know. That you were kind, practical, that you'd take care of what was yours. You weren't mine then. Wasn't I? She turned in his arms to face him. I think I was yours from that moment. Just took us a while to figure it out. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. Lillian. Ask me, she whispered. Ask you what? What you've been wanting to ask since we got here. Since we've been alone with just the fire and the storm. His eyes darkened. You sure? I've been sure for weeks. I'm your wife. Colton, in every way but one. And I want to be yours completely. You are mine, he said fiercely. Have been since you faced down that blizzard to save me. Then show me. He kissed her then, different from all their kisses before. This had intent behind it. Promise. When he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Not here, he said. Not in some line shack with a narrow bunk and mouse-eaten blankets. You deserve better. I don't need better. I need you. Lillian. His control was clearly hanging by a thread. Please, let me do this right. Let me give you a proper wedding night when we get home, with our bed and privacy and... She silenced him with another kiss. You impossible romantic. Fine, but when we get home... When we get home, he agreed, voice rough with promise. They settled back into their original position, her in his lap, his arms securing her against the chill that crept in despite the fire. The storm began to ease, rain gentling from a salt to patter. Colton, I have another secret. Oh. She took a deep breath. I know about medicine, more than just watching my father. I studied with him, unofficially, helped with births, injuries. I could help Doc Phillips. Maybe help the women who won't see a male doctor for certain things. He was quiet for a long moment. That's why you knew how to set my ankle. Why you saved that calf when I'd have given up. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because most men don't want a wife who knows more than them about anything. Because I've learned to hide that part of myself to avoid trouble. He turned her to face him again. Listen to me. I don't want you to hide any part of yourself. Not from me. You want to help Doc Phillips do it. You want to tend the women in town. I'll drive you to every house myself. You mean that... I married a woman who answered a stranger's advertisement and traveled across the country on faith, who learned to work cattle and mend fences and stretch a dollar until it screamed, who stood up to the biggest gossip in town and punched Ben Morrison better than I did. I did not punch anyone. You wanted to... I saw your fist clench. He grinned at her outrage. Point is, I didn't marry you despite your strength. Lillian, I married you because of it. And if you got healing skills this town needs, then by God, you'll use them. She kissed him then, pouring all her gratitude and love into it. When they broke apart, she whispered against his lips, Make me yours in this cabin. He groaned. You're killing me, woman. Just practicing for when we get home. Practice away, he managed. But we're leaving at first light, storm or no storm. She laughed, settling back against him. The fire crackled. The rain whispered against the roof. And two people who'd started as strangers held each other through the night, planning a future neither had dared dream of alone. When dawn came, pale and watery through breaking clouds, they dressed in still damp clothes and hitched the horses with fingers that lingered and eyes that promised. The ride home was quiet but charged, every accidental touch sparking like lightning. As they crested the final hill and saw the ranch spread below them, Colton pulled the wagon to a stop. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. He turned to her, taking both her hands. I just wanted to say, before we go back to real life, thank you. For what? For answering my advertisement. For staying when it got hard. For seeing something in me worth loving. He brought her hands to his lips. For making me believe in someday again. Oh, Colton, She blinked back tears. "Thank you for giving me a home, a purpose, a place to belong." "You are home," he said simply. "Wherever you are, that's home now." They drove down to the ranch in comfortable silence, both knowing that when night fell, the promises made in firelight would finally be kept. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. Like them, Lillian thought, washed clean of old guilts and fears, ready to begin properly at last. As they pulled into the yard, she saw their life spread before them, hard work and challenges, certainly, but faced together. No more walls, no more distances. Just two people who'd found each other across miles and expectations, building something strong enough to weather any storm. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Hayes?" Colton asked, helping her down from the wagon. "I am home, Mr. Hayes," she replied, and followed him inside. The spring festival had transformed Dry Creek into something almost cheerful. Bunting stretched between buildings, and the smell of roasting meat drifted from cook fires. Children ran between booths while their parents pretended the winter's hardships were behind them. Lillian smoothed her best dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out her eyes, beside her. Colton looked uncomfortable in his Sunday clothes, tugging at his collar like a schoolboy. "Stop fidgeting," she murmured, threading her arm through his. "I hate these things." "I know, but we need to show our faces, prove we're part of this community." He squeezed her arm gently. "Since when do you care what they think?" "Since I realized we'll be raising children here someday." The words slipped out before she could stop them. They hadn't talked about children yet, though the possibility hung between them like morning mist. Colton's step faltered. "Children. Someday," she said quickly. If you want." "I want," his voice was rough. "God, Lillian, I want everything with you." Before she could respond, Mayor Hutchkins mounted the makeshift platform in the town square. The spring festival traditionally began with speeches and ended with dancing, if you could call the awkward shuffling that passed for dancing in Dry Creek actual dancing. "Friends, neighbors," the mayor began. "We've survived another winter." Scattered applause greeted this pronouncement. Lillian noticed how thin some faces were, how patched most clothes. Survival was no small thing here. "Before we commence our celebrations," Hutchkins continued, "I have an unfortunate announcement. As you know, our town treasury has been carefully managed these many years." A murmur ran through the crowd, beside the platform. Marshal Tate stood with his thumbs hooked in his gun belt, watching the crowd with sharp eyes. "However," the mayor's voice cracked, "it appears there has been a discrepancy. The funds set aside for the new school, the bridge repairs, the widow's fund." "Spit it out." "Hutchkins," someone called. "Gone." The word fell like a stone into water. "The money is gone." The crowd erupted. Voices raised in anger, confusion, fear. Lillian felt Colton tense beside her, his body shifting into the stance of a man expecting trouble. Now, Tate stepped onto the platform, hands raised. "Let's not panic. I'm investigating the matter thoroughly. Rest assured, we'll find our thief." "How much?" Jed Crow's voice cut through the noise. Tate's smile was thin. "Near $8,000. The number hit like a physical blow. $8,000 was a fortune more money than most of them would see in a lifetime. It represented years of scrimping, saving, hoping for better. "I already have suspects," Tate continued, his gaze sweeping the crowd and landing, with theatrical precision, on Colton. "After all, we all know who in this town has pressing debts, who might be desperate enough." "Now wait a minute." Colton stepped forward, but Lillian caught his arm. "Don't," she whispered. "That's what he wants." But Sadie Donovan was already speaking, her voice carrying that particular sweetness that meant blood in the water. "It's true that the Hayes Ranch has been struggling, and with a new wife to support. Funny how quick you are to accuse. Sadie. The words were out before Lillian could stop them. She stepped forward, chin high. Almost like you've been thinking about it, planning what to say. How dare you? No, how dare you? Lillian's voice rose, carrying across the square. My husband works from dawn to past dusk every single day. His hands are cut from mending wire, his back bent from hauling feed. He's never taken anything that wasn't his in his life. Pretty words, Tate drawled. But facts are facts. Hayes owes the bank. His payment's coming due. Man gets desperate. Then investigate. Lillian met his gaze squarely. Check our finances. Check our property. Check under our mattress if you want. You'll find nothing but hard work and honest debt. Lillian, Colton warned. But she was past caution. You want to know what I find interesting? Marshall, how quick you are to point fingers. How ready with accusations. Almost like you don't want people looking too close at the real situation. Tate's face darkened. Are you saying something, Mrs. Hayes? I'm saying that in my experience, the loudest accusers often have the most to hide. That's enough. Mayor Hutchkins wrung his hands. Mrs. Hayes, these are serious matters. Yes, they are. A new voice entered the fray. Sheriff William Thornton from the county seat pushed through the crowd, 2 deputies flanking him. Which is why I'm here. Tate stiffened. Sheriff, didn't know you were coming. Funny thing, I didn't know myself until this morning. Got a telegram. Anonymous. Said if I wanted to find Dry Creek's missing money, I should check the land records at the county office. The crowd went silent, leaning in like grass before a storm. Seems someone's been buying up land parcels around Miller's Spring. Thornton continued, quiet-like, using different names, but the signatures. He produced a paper. They all match. Care to explain? Marshall Tate. Tate's hand moved toward his gun, but the deputies already had theirs drawn. I wouldn't, Thornton advised. Now, about those land purchases. Funny thing, they were all paid for in cash. Large bills, the kind that might come from, say, a town treasury. This is ridiculous, Sadie interjected, but her voice shook. Virgil is a respected lawman. Who's been taking bribes from your husband's bank to look the other way on foreclosures? Tom Hewitt stepped forward, weathered face grim. I've kept quiet, but not anymore. Not when he's stealing from widows' funds and school children. You have proof? Thornton asked. Written records, names, dates, amounts. Tom reached into his coat, pulled out a wrapped packet. Been keeping them safe, waiting for someone with authority who wasn't in Tate's pocket. Tom, Sadie's husband, banker Nicholas Donovan, pushed forward. Think about what you're doing. I am thinking about every family you've pushed off their land, every fee that appeared from nowhere, every time Tate here enforced a foreclosure that didn't need enforcing. It's business, Nicholas sputtered. It's theft, Lillian said clearly. Theft wearing a badge and a banker's suit. The crowd stirred, angry murmurs building. These people had suffered through winter, scrimped and saved, only to have their hopes stolen by those they trusted. Mrs. Donovan. Thornton turned to Sadie. I'll need to speak with you as well. Seems your signature is on some interesting documents. Sadie's perfectly arranged face crumbled. I only did what Nicholas said. I didn't know. You knew. Martha Crow stepped forward. You knew every time you turned your nose up at families who lost their homes. Every time you gossiped about poor life choices, when it was your husband's greed causing the poorness. Enough evidence here for arrests. Thornton decided. Tate, Donovan, you're coming with me. Mrs. Donovan, don't leave town. As the deputies led Tate away, he shot a venomous look at Lillian. This isn't over. Yes, she said simply. It is. The crowd buzzed like a disturbed hive. Mayor Hutchkins flapped his hands, trying to restore order, but nobody was listening. The festival atmosphere had transformed into something else a reckoning. "You did it," Colton murmured in her ear. "You stood up to them." "We did it," she corrected. "Tom had evidence. The sheriff had authority. I just pushed things along. You were magnificent." His voice held wonder. "When did my practical wife become a firebrand? When they threatened what's mine." His arm tightened around her. "Let's go home." "The festival will go on without us. Besides," his voice dropped, "I'd rather celebrate in private." But as they turned to go, Ben Morrison blocked their path. His face was haggard, but clear-eyed sober for the first time in weeks. "Hayes, Mrs. Hayes," he twisted his hat in his hands. "I owe you an apology." Colton stiffened, but Lillian touched his arm gently. "How's your son?" "Better. Fever broke last night. Doc says he'll make it." Ben swallowed hard. "I was wrong. What I said, how I acted. Grief and whiskey are poor excuses, but they're all I got." "We've all done things we regret," Lillian said carefully. "Not like this. Not—" He met Colton's eyes. "I blamed you for Ellen because it was easier than blaming God or fate or just bad luck. I'm sorry." Colton was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "Water under the bridge, Ben?" They shook, and something in the crowd's energy shifted. If Ben Morrison could apologize, if Virgil Tate could be arrested, if the high and mighty could fall, then maybe anything was possible. Mrs. Hayes." Sarah Morrison appeared at her husband's elbow. "I heard you know something about birthing, about women's troubles." "A little," Lillian said cautiously. "My sister's time is coming soon. She's scared of male doctors. Would you consider—" "I'd be honored." And just like that, the wall that had stood between the Hayeses and the town began to crumble. Others approached, tentative but hopeful. Women who needed help they were too ashamed to seek from Doc Phillips. Men who respected Colton's quiet strength in the face of false accusations. "Looks like you're stuck here," Jed commented, grinning. "Can't leave now, you're part of the town." As the sun set over Dry Creek, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Lillian felt something settle in her chest. Home, not just the ranch, not just Colton, but this place with all its flaws and possibilities. "Ready to go?" Colton asked. She looked around at neighbors becoming friends, at justice being served, at a future that suddenly seemed bright with promise. "Yes," she said, taking his arm. "Let's go home." As they drove back to the ranch, the evening star appeared in the darkening sky. Lillian made a wish not for ease or wealth, but for the strength to meet whatever came next. Beside her, Colton hummed something that might have been a hymn or might have been pure contentment. The spring festival would go down in Dry Creek history as the day everything changed. But for Lillian and Colton Hayes, it was simply the day their real life together began, not as strangers bound by necessity, but as partners bound by choice, respect, and love. The money would be recovered, most of it. Tate would face trial. The Donovans would leave town in disgrace. But all that was tomorrow's concern. Tonight, there was just a man and woman driving home through the gathering dark, hands clasped, hearts full, ready to face whatever storms might come together. The badge arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by Sheriff Thornton himself. Colton stared at it like it might bite, the tin star catching sunlight on their kitchen table. "Town Marshal," he looked up at Thornton. "I'm a rancher." "You're a man people trust," Thornton corrected. "After what happened with Tate, Dry Creek needs someone honest, someone who can't be bought." "I've got a ranch to run. Part-time position, few hours a week, unless there's trouble. Town can't pay much, but—" "We'll take it," Lillian said from the doorway. She'd been listening, flour still dusting her apron from morning baking. Colton shot her a look. Lillian, the town needs you, and frankly, we could use the extra income. She moved to stand behind his chair, hands on his shoulders. Besides, someone needs to keep the peace properly for once. Thornton smiled. Listen to your wife, Hayes. She's got more sense than half the territory combined. After he left, Colton fingered the badge uncertainly. I don't know the first thing about being a lawman. You know right from wrong. Sometimes that's enough. And if it's not, then we'll figure it out, together, like we always do. The first test came sooner than expected. 3 strangers rode into town that Thursday. Hard-faced men with careful eyes and guns worn loose in their holsters. They hitched their horses outside the saloon and disappeared inside, but not before everyone on Main Street had taken notice. Trouble, Jed muttered, finding Colton at the general store. Those boys aren't cowboys or drummers. I know. Colton had been watching them through the window. Send word to the ranches. Tell folks to stay alert. What are you going to do? My job, apparently. The saloon was dim and quiet when Colton entered. The 3 strangers had claimed a corner table, backs to the wall. Professional placement. They watched him approach with expressions that gave away nothing. Gentlemen, welcome to Dry Creek. The one in the middle, older, with scars across his knuckles, smiled thinly. Marshal, heard this town had some recent changes in leadership. News travels. It does. Also heard the town treasury had some problems, missing funds and such. All recovered and accounted for. That's so. The man leaned back. Shame. We were hoping to offer our protection services. Help ensure nothing like that happens again. Town's got all the protection it needs. 1 part-time marshal. The younger one on the left laughed. Come on now. 1 marshal in a town full of people who've had enough of being pushed around. Colton kept his voice easy, but his hand rested near his gun. Best you move along. Or what? The scarred one stood slowly. You'll arrest us for what, having a drink? For disturbing the peace, if need be. Whose peace I don't hear anyone complaining. I am? Sarah Morrison stepped out from behind the bar. Doc Phillips's shotgun steady in her hands. This is my establishment now, and I don't serve your kind. My kind. The man's voice turned ugly. Bullies, thugs, men who prey on decent folks. She cocked the shotgun. Like the marshal said, move along. The bat-wing doors creaked. Ben Morrison entered, rifle casual in his arms. Then Tom Hewitt, then others, ranchers and townsmen who'd gotten Jed's message. They didn't speak, just stood ready. The scarred man looked around, calculating odds. This isn't over. Yes, Colton said quietly. It is. You've got 10 minutes to be out of town. Don't come back. They left, but Colton knew it wasn't finished. Men like that didn't give up easy. We should post watches, Tom suggested. Already thinking it. But first, Colton turned to Sarah. Since when do you own the saloon? She blushed. Since yesterday. Used the money from selling our old place back east. Figured the town needed a respectable establishment. No gambling, no working girls, just drinks and honest company. And shotguns, apparently. A woman needs hobbies. That night, Colton sat with Lillian on their porch, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. She'd been quiet through dinner, thoughtful. They'll be back, he said. I know. Could get ugly. I know that too. She took his hand. But we can't live in fear. This town is our home now. Worth defending. When did we become defenders of anything? We're just what people who care, who've built something worth protecting. She squeezed his hand. That's everything. Colton. The attack came 3 nights later. The strangers had recruited others drifters and malcontents who saw opportunity in chaos. They rode in shooting, torches ready for burning. But Dry Creek was ready too. The church bell rang, warning. Windows shuttered. Rifles appeared. Colton coordinated the defense from the marshal's office, sending riders to cut off escape routes. "They're heading for the bank," someone shouted. "Let them." Colton ordered. "Tom, take your men around behind. Sarah, hold the east end of town." "What about you?" He checked his rifle. "I'm going to end this." The fight was brief but vicious. The raiders, expecting easy pickings, found instead a town that fought back. When the smoke cleared, 2 raiders were dead, 3 captured, the rest scattered to the winds. "You did it." Mayor Hutchins pumped Colton's hand. "You saved the town." "We saved ourselves," Colton corrected. "I just helped point folks in the right direction." But the real victory came after. As townspeople emerged to help each other, old grudges seemed smaller in the face of shared danger. Even Sadie Donovan, awaiting her husband's trial, came out to help tend the wounded. "Mrs. Hayes," she approached Lillian tentatively. "I owe you an apology." Lillian studied her former tormentor. Sadie looked older, the perfect facade cracked. "You owe the whole town an apology." "I know. I let pride and greed poison me. Nicholas promised such grand things, and I wanted to believe." She twisted her hands. "I'm trying to make amends." "Then make them. Don't tell me show the town. Help rebuild what your husband tried to destroy." "I will. I promise." Whether she would keep that promise remained to be seen, but it was a start. The biggest surprise came 2 days later. Lillian was at home, treating a ranch hand's infected cut, when Sarah Morrison arrived in a panic. "It's time," she gasped. "My sister, the baby's coming wrong. Doc Phillips is 20 miles away at the Johnson Ranch." Lillian didn't hesitate. "Get my medical bag. Colton, boil water. Lots of it." The birth was complicated, a breech presentation that would have challenged even Doc Phillips. But Lillian's hands were steady, her voice calm as she guided mother and baby through the dangerous process. "Push now. Emma, I know it hurts, but push." "I can't. You can. You're the strongest woman I know. One more push." Hours passed, the room filled with prayers and held breath. Then, finally, a cry thin but strong. "It's a girl," Lillian announced, exhausted but triumphant. A beautiful, healthy girl. Emma Morrison wept with relief, cradling her daughter. "Thank you. Oh, thank you." "What will you call her?" "Lillian," Emma said without hesitation. "Lillian Hope Morrison." Later, as Lillian cleaned up, she found half the town gathered in the Morrison parlor. Word had spread their marshal's wife had saved a mother and baby. "Seems Doc Phillips might need an assistant," Mayor Hutchins suggested. "Someone trained in midwifery and women's medicine." "I'm not formally trained," Lillian protested. "You've got knowledge and steady hands. That's more than most." He smiled. "Town council meets next week. We'll make it official." Walking home under the stars, Colton took her hand. "Look at us, marshal and midwife, regular pillars of the community." "Who would have thought?" She leaned into him. "That desperate spinster and broken-down rancher would amount to something. We were never those things. Just took us a while to see it. And the town to see it, too." They paused at their gate, looking back at Dry Creek's lights. The town seemed different now, not just a collection of buildings, but a community they'd helped forge. "No regrets?" Colton asked. "Not one. Only that it took so long to find you." She kissed him then, long and sweet under the Wyoming stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, ranch work and peacekeeping, births and disputes, the endless struggle of frontier life. But tonight they were home, together, part of something larger than themselves. "Oh," Lillian said suddenly. "I forgot to tell you, Emma's husband offered to trade services carpentry for medical care." "That's nice. I told him we need a room added to the house, a proper medical office where I can see patients. Good idea. And maybe, eventually, a nursery. Colton stopped walking. Lillian. She smiled, mysterious in the starlight. Not yet, but someday, when we're ready. I'm ready now. Patience, Marshall Hayes, all good things in time. Including stubborn wives who spring surprises, especially those. They went inside, leaving the night to its peace. Dry Creek slept safer with its new marshal watching over it, its new midwife ready to bring life into the world. And in the Hayes house, two people who'd started as strangers built their future one careful, precious day at a time. The badge sat on the kitchen table, catching moonlight through the window. Such a small thing to represent such large changes. But then, Lillian reflected as she prepared for bed, the most important transformations often came in small packages, a letter answered, a code offered, a hand extended in trust. Tomorrow she'd help bring new life into the world, and Colton would keep peace in their adopted town. Tonight, they were simply themselves, no longer mail-order bride and desperate rancher, but partners in every sense that mattered. It was, she thought as sleep claimed her, more than enough. It was everything. The school fire started in the early hours of a September morning. Lillian woke to the frantic clanging of the church bell. 3 rings. Pause. 3 rings. Fire. The school! Someone shouted in the street. Colton was already pulling on his boots. Stay here. Like hell. She was right behind him, grabbing her medical bag. Experience had taught her that fires meant injuries. The scene was chaos. Flames licked from the schoolhouse windows, smoke billowing black against the dawn sky. Half the town had formed a bucket brigade from the well, but the old wooden building was going up like kindling. Is everyone out? Colton grabbed Mayor Hutchkins. We think so, but... The mayor's face was stricken. The Garrett children, they sleep in the back room sometimes when their pa's drinking. Without hesitation, Colton started toward the building, but Lillian caught his arm. Your ankle. It's still weak from last month's fall. Lillian. I'm smaller. I can get through the window. She was already moving, ignoring his shout of protest. The heat hit her like a wall. Smoke burned her lungs, turned her eyes to streaming misery. But she'd seen the big cottonwood beside the school, its branches reaching toward the upper windows. If she could climb. Lillian? No, Martha Crow's voice behind her. But she was already shimmying up the trunk, skirts hiked scandalously high. The bark scraped her palms raw. A branch cracked under her weight, sending her sliding before she caught herself. Please, God, she whispered, inching along a sturdy limb toward the window. The glass had already shattered from the heat. She could see inside 2 small forms huddled in the corner, frozen with terror. The Garrett boys, no more than 6 and 8. Come here, she stretched through the window, ignoring the flames creeping across the ceiling. Take my hand. The older boy, Timothy, pushed his brother forward. Take Sam first. There wasn't time to argue. Lillian hauled Sam through the window, his weight nearly overbalancing her on the branch. Hold tight to my neck. Don't look down. Somehow she got him to the trunk, where willing hands waited to receive him. Back she went for Timothy, the branch groaning ominously. Jump, she ordered. I'll catch you. He jumped. She caught. The branch broke. For a moment, they fell through smoke and air. Then strong arms caught them, Colton and Ben Morrison breaking their fall. Lillian's shoulder exploded in pain as it wrenched from its socket. But Timothy was safe. Mama, the boy's mother, Helen Garrett, fell to her knees, sobbing as she clutched her children. Let me see that shoulder. Doc Phillips materialized through the smoke. In a minute, Lillian was already assessing injuries among the firefighters. Burns, smoke inhalation, cuts from broken glass. She worked one-handed, her dislocated shoulder screaming, until Colton physically carried her to Doc's makeshift treatment area. Stubborn woman, Doc muttered, manipulating her shoulder back into place with a practiced move that made her see stars. "Learned from the best," she gasped. The school was a total loss, but no lives were lost. As dawn broke fully, revealing the charred skeleton of the building, the town gathered in exhausted clusters. "We'll rebuild," Mayor Hutchkins declared. "Better than before? Brick this time?" "With what money?" someone asked. "We'll find it. Somehow." "The railroad's coming through," Tom Hewitt said quietly. "Surveyors were in last week. Track will pass 10 miles north." A murmur ran through the crowd. The railroad meant prosperity. Growth, but also change. For better or worse. Dry Creek's isolation was ending. "That's months away," Sadie Donovan spoke up. She'd stayed in town after Nicholas's imprisonment, trying to make amends. "The children need schooling now. I have a large parlor. We could hold classes there until—" "You'd do that." Helen Garrett's voice was suspicious. "It's the least I can do." Sadie's chin lifted. "I've been many things, but I won't see children go without education because of adult failures." It was a start, another small step in Sadie's redemption. Over the following weeks, Lillian's shoulder healed slowly. She chafed at the restriction, especially when patients needed tending. But Colton turned surprisingly strict. "You saved 2 children climbing a burning tree," he reminded her. "You can rest for a few days without the world ending. But Mrs. Patterson is due any day. And I'll drive you there when it's time. In the meantime, sit, read. Let me take care of you for once." It was during this enforced rest that she felt the first flutter, so faint she almost missed it like butterfly wings inside her belly. She froze, hand pressed to her stomach. "Lillian," Colton looked up from the ranch ledgers. "You all right?" She felt it again, stronger. Colton, I think I'm with child." The ledger hit the floor. He was across the room in 2 strides, dropping to his knees beside her chair. "You think—" "I've missed my monthly courses twice. I thought it was the stress, the work, but—" Another flutter. "Feel—" He placed his hand on her stomach, wonder dawning on his face. They stayed like that, barely breathing, until he felt it too, the tiny movement of new life. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby. Due in spring, I think April, maybe May." "Lillian," his voice broke. I'm going to be a father." "And a good one." She touched his face. "I've seen you with the town children. You'll be wonderful. What if I'm not? What if I'm like my father, cold, distant? What if?" "What if you're exactly who you are, a man who reads poetry in secret and gives his coat to strangers, who stands up for what's right, even when it costs him?" She smiled through tears. This child will be so loved. Colton, so protected. He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, one hand still pressed to where their child grew. The news spread as news always did in small towns. Soon, gifts appeared on their porch, tiny knitted blankets, carved wooden toys, preserves for the pantry. The women's sewing circle, led by Martha Crow, began work on a complete layette. "First baby born to the marshal and midwife," Martha declared. "This child will want for nothing." Even Helen Garrett contributed, shyly offering a small quilt. "For saving my boys," she said simply. The railroad surveyors returned in October, bringing plans and promises. The track would indeed pass north, but a spur line could be built to Dry Creek for the right incentives. Water rights. The lead surveyor explained at the town meeting, "The railroad needs water for the steam engines. You've got good sources here. Make a deal. And prosperity follows the rails." It should have been simple, but water in Wyoming was never simple. Ranchers needed it for cattle, farmers for crops. The proposed railroad usage would strain resources, especially in dry years. "We need regulations." Colton said, "Fair distribution, legal frameworks. "Spoken like a lawman," someone called out, not unkindly. "Spoken like someone who's seen what happens when resources get scarce," he countered. "We do this right, or we don't do it at all." It took weeks of negotiation, but eventually a compromise emerged. Water shares, rotation schedules, infrastructure improvements funded by railroad money. Not perfect, but workable. "You've got a head for this," Judge Patterson observed. "Ever think about studying law territory needs men who understand both justice and practicality?" "I'm a rancher," Colton protested, "and a marshal, and now a negotiator." The judge smiled. "Think about it. Correspondence courses from back east. I could mentor you." That night, Colton shared the conversation with Lillian as they prepared for bed. "Law," he mused. "Never thought I'd have the education for it." "You have the mind for it, and the heart." She settled against him, his hand automatically finding her growing belly. "Besides, our child should have every opportunity. A father who's a lawyer sounds rather impressive." "Our child will have opportunities regardless, but—" He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe, if you wouldn't mind the late night studying—" "I'll be up anyway with the baby. We can keep each other company." Winter came gently that year, as if nature itself recognized the town needed respite. The new school brick, as promised, rose from the ashes. Sadie Donovan proved true to her word, hosting classes without complaint. The railroad crews worked steadily north, the distant sound of their progress carrying on quiet days. And in the Hayes house, two people prepared for their greatest adventure yet. Colton studied law by lamplight while Lillian sewed tiny garments. They argued over names, planned additions to the house, dreamed of future bright with possibility. "No regrets?" Colton asked one evening, echoing his question from months before. Lillian looked around their home at the medical texts on her shelf, the law books on his desk, the tiny boots waiting by the hearth, at the man beside her who'd grown from suspicious stranger to beloved husband to father of her unborn child. "Not one," she said, meaning it. "This life we've built, it's more than I dared dream." "Mail-order bride makes good," he teased. "Desperate rancher finds happiness," she countered. "Two lost souls find home," he said softly. "That's the real story." Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. But inside was warmth and light and love, everything that mattered. Spring would bring their child into a world of challenge and change. The railroad would transform Dry Creek from frontier outpost to modern town. There would be new conflicts, new struggles, new triumphs. But tonight, in this moment, there was peace. And in that peace, two people who'd risked everything on a newspaper advertisement held each other close and counted their blessings. The future stretched before them, bright with promise, together. They would meet at Marshall and Midwife, husband and wife, soon to be parents, partners in every adventure life might bring. It was enough. It was everything. It was home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Dear listeners, I'm curious to know where in the world you're enjoying this tale. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and exchange thoughts about Lillian and Colton's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Night. Hit that like button, and don't forget to click the hype button to help more people discover this video. Your support means everything.